So, good evening once again, and we want to start from where we ended yesterday, where we were looking at the housing problems. Now, today we want to look at what we call sustainable housing, and when we are referring to sustainable housing, we are looking at issues, different factors. We're looking at different factors that describe housing. So specifically, we're looking at infrastructure and service. So in simple terms, sustainable housing would refer to homes and buildings that are designed and constructed to minimize their impact on the environment, but also they provide a very healthy and comfortable living space for the occupants. And some of the key factors or some of the key features of sustainable housing include providing essential services like water, communication, electricity, and good roads in the designated areas, but also that there should be affordable housing. In other words, through government or private partnerships, government should be able to directly develop quality, affordable, but also mass housing for low and middle income earners. But also another feature is that there needs to be an upgrading informal settlement. You have to consider sites and services, which we looked at yesterday, that at the site you could offer different services. So you have to look at the options to improve existing informal settlements and provide decent housing. So we understand that in different societies, there's a different way constructions are done. If you understand your locality, you will understand why they have that particular kind of structure of a household or of a housing. So to have a sustainable housing in an economy, it is important that we upgrade the informal settlements that we have. When we're referring to upgrading informal settlements, it means those that do not meet the standards of the policy that exist on housing should be upgraded. Then we have rural development. We need to plan and develop rural areas with the necessary infrastructure to discourage the rural-urban migration. Because as we looked at earlier on, you realize the rural-urban migration is actually a very huge cause for some of these challenges in housing, because of the high population influx in the urban settlements. You realize that slums start to spring up, and different other poor infrastructure and public health threats start to arise in there. So we also need to curb urban slums through implementing housing planning to prevent slum formations. We need financial accessibility, especially on mortgage funds. We need to provide credit facilities to enable people to afford decent housing, so that where people are able to access credit or loan facilities, it is very easy for them to be able to construct decent houses where they can exist, where they can live. But also we, as government or as private partners, there is need to offer subsidies to encourage home ownership. So we have seen this mainly in the private sector, where they are condominiums and so forth. So people have to just buy a whole home you find that there are companies, construction civil engineering companies that have constructed houses already according to the affordability, and therefore one can just be able to buy a house on a subsidy. And like I was giving an example yesterday of our East African neighbors of Rwanda, you're able to realize that because of their housing policy on subsidies, home ownership is easier than for us in other parts of the region. So we also have urban planning, and you need to enforce urban and land use planning for well-developed city areas, but also land acquisition and permits. We need ease land titling, building permits processes to facilitate access to good housing. And then you have to look at the idea of sustainable construction, promote the use of alternative building materials and new technology to reduce reliance on imported materials, because we understand the cost that arises from imported materials, and therefore if we promoted continuous use of imported materials, then the chances that fewer people continue to access decent housing becomes very hard. But also in terms of sustainable construction, we want to have laws that that have a standard on which kind of material, but also which type of construction to be carried on, because then we want to avoid the issues of temporary constructions. Then we need to make it a little simpler for people to access land titles, but also for them to be able to have their plans approved for their buildings. And even similarly, land acquisition and permits should be made simpler. And we must be able to enforce some of these laws for us to have a better land use. If a particular place is being located for farming, then we must be able to enforce that here only farming occurs and no other activity takes place. So then that is how we can be able to enforce our urban and land use planning. So what are the space resources for sustainable exploration? The European Space Agency sees space resources as key to sustainable space exploration, using moon and asteroid materials for future missions. Innovations on the Earth, new technologies developed for space can solve problems on the Earth, but also we have economic benefits. And here we are looking at partnerships between space agencies and private companies to create economic opportunities. So in other words, if we're referring to sustainable explorations, we are mainly, we want to look at how to create a more sustainable approach towards housing, and probably we can look at even issues of renewable energy sources, so such as solar, such as wind or geothermal power. So in other words, for us to have a sustainable exploration in the space, we realize we could be able to use some of these renewable energy sources. So then we are able to have a material. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to first take you to the first slide under sustainable housing. I would like to know those points you explained. Are they under components of sustainable housing? I don't get it. because the heading is just sustainable housing, but I don't understand where those points falls. Are they under components or yeah? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That is noted. When on this is the slide you're talking about, we're trying to explain. We're trying to explain. We wouldn't want to refer to them as components, but some could be components. But in other words, we're trying to look at how we can even achieve sustainable housing. But in other words, we can even but in other words, we want to look at how we want to achieve, how we can achieve sustainable housing. This is mainly what it is referring to. We're looking at how we want to achieve sustainable housing, not necessarily the components of sustainable housing. I hope that answers your question.
It's okay. Thank you.
All right. So, like I was saying, that it is easier for us to use space resources, and one of the space resources I was referring to is sustainable energy, and that it can help us to create sustainable housing in there. But also sometimes this space exploration or the use of new technologies can help us in issues of waste reduction, where we can have sustainable homes that are designed to minimize waste with features like composting, toilets, and recycling facilities. So we need to partner a lot with those who are doing research, but also with the space agencies and the private companies, so that we're able to create economic opportunities that can help us utilize the space resources that we have. But just away from what we're looking at here, if you wanted to answer a question on the components or some of the features of sustainable housing, you would be from just the issue that the colleague here was raising. I think Betty, from what she was raising, you would actually refer to some of the features such as energy efficiency, that a sustainable home or sustainable housing should have should be energy efficient, meaning they can be designed to use natural light and ventilation. So you instead of using ACs, you would just have a natural ventilation in there. But also you would have renewable energy sources, like I have said. Another feature could be water conservation. If we're referring to sustainable housing, meaning that the sustainable homes often feature low flow fixtures, and that the grey water reuse system, where water just flows probably from rainwater, you're able to reserve water and use it for home use. But also waste reduction, then indoor air quality. In other words, you need to provide good indoor quality through the natural ventilation that we talked about. But also, if we want to refer to sustainable housing, another feature is that it should be affordable. They need to be affordable and accessible to a range of people. But also, it should be able to withstand natural disasters, and it should have innovative designs. So those are some of the components in there. But also someone would want to look at what are some of the benefits of sustainable housing in there. And you would need to look at some of the benefits such as reduced energy consumption, low utility bills, improved indoor air quality, affordable and accessible housing options, and so forth and so on. You will need to go and explore some of the benefits of this particular sustainable housing. So, if we went back to space exploration, we are now asking the question of why now? Why now? And we're saying that recent advancement in space exploration knowledge, then there is increased international and private sector involvement, then the development of new technologies. And someone may be asking us about what are some of the facts about this space exploration. If we are referring to space exploration, we are in other words looking at issues such as solar system overview. We're looking at science itself. We're looking at fundamental disease research. We're looking at water purification systems, drug development. So in other words, the space exploration we are looking at is not only looking specifically at the solar system alone. We're looking at a very broad aspect here that we need to focus on broadly. And for you may start to struggle where you may be wondering where this can be exploited. This can be this may be important for you, but like I said, for any of these issues that we're tackling here, it is important that you refer to them related to your demographics. How does it affect particular characteristics of the people, probably by age, by sex, by place of residence, and so forth. You need to look at the demographic aspects, but also you need to look at how it affects in regards to reproductive health. Issues of innovation, use of new technologies. When we were discussing issues of reproductive health the other time, we were able to realize that new technologies have come in. So how does the space exploration give us an opportunity in reproductive health issues? So we look at the key issues of interest. Need to do space exploration because mining moon resources like water, oxygen, metals for exploration, but also we need to utilize resources for energy, construction, and other needs. Those are the key. The reasons why are here, that there is a recent advancement in space exploration, there's an increased international and private sector involvement, and there's a development of new technology. That is why we are interested in looking at the issues of space resources for sustainable exploration. And therefore, our key interests here that we want to look at mainly is that we want to look at the mining moon resources. We want to see utilization of utilizing resources for energy, construction, and other needs. But also, we want to look at developing robotics and autonomous systems for resource extraction. And for us to look deeply into these key areas of interest, we may not be able to explain or look at them deeper in this particular module. But what we want to pick from here is that utilizing resources or trying to understand space or trying to explain space resource utilization would give us different benefits which we need to look at, so that we're able to see how it is possible for us to apply some of the space resource utilization issues in here. So issues of robotics and autonomous systems, we have seen it. For example, recently we have seen it in the AI, the artificial intelligence, and those are the issues we want to look at. So for you should be able to look at how AI has affected reproductive health in terms of service delivery, but also in terms of service seeking of service by the population. So probably AI could have negatively or positively impacted on utilization of reproductive health services, but also you should be able to look at in terms of the space resource utilization. What are some of the benefits of using space resources? For example, the solar energy. You realize it is impacting on housing so much. People are able to use solar systems. People are able to have their natural ventilation. You realize sometimes people using the space such as ventilation is a natural way of aerating your housing, but also resources like water, resources like oxygen. These are resources that impact a lot on the levels of housing, but also on the quality of housing. And therefore, you need to look at all these the range of all these key areas of interest and subject them, one, to housing, but also two, to demography itself and to reproductive health. But mainly, if you want to subject it to demography, you should be able to subject it to issues of the birth rates and the death rates. So you realize the developing robotics and autonomous systems, whereas they are impacting on housing, but in demography as well, they will be impacting on issues of employment. So you should be able to look at a whole range of those issues if you're to make sense of this whole space exploration issue. So what are some of the benefits of space exploration? Space exploration utilization, we look at reduces reliance on expensive Earth-supplied resources, but also it enables sustainable exploration of the moon and beyond. It creates opportunity for scientific research and economic development. So it is a whole very beneficial issue, but it needs deeper perusal through. In simple terms, for you to make sense of the space resource utilization, it is critical for you to understand necessarily what we want to look at. But I could just give us some of the benefits, just to expand these benefits that you're having here. These ones are not necessarily here on the notes, but you can note them as I am as I make my submissions in here. But some of the benefits of space exploration and utilization include natural resource management and conservation, meaning that we have disaster response and recovery. Most times you're hearing every time NASA and other meteorological centers provide prior information regarding disasters or probably issues such as solar eclipse and so forth. So importance is that it helps in that disaster response. But also you realize that there are satellite communications and data transmissions that occur in the space, and therefore it is a telecommunication and navigation area. That is another importance of space resource utilization. And since we are referring to issues of satellite communication, that therefore means that it is affecting reproductive health issues in here. But also you understand that some of the reproductive health issues rely on the movement of the moon. For example, we have family planning methods, natural family planning methods that rely on the movement of the moon. And therefore, exploration of the space such as the moon and beyond help in understanding the sustainability of such reproductive health methods. But also, like we've said, space-based research and development, therefore scientific discoveries and understanding of the universe. And then we have issues of telemedicine and so forth. So it is a whole huge issue. In other words, in simple terms, there's better technology, there's understanding the universe, there's protecting the earth, there's inspiration and education, economic growth, and we have an improved daily life in there. So in other words, those are some of the issues regarding that. So we were looking at this, the European Space Agency, and we are just looking at some of the roles that the agency plays. And for us, I would want us to look at our own context. Whereas this may be the European Space Agency, we might have, in a local context, we might have our own local meteorological agencies that help us look better at this space exploration. And therefore, some of the roles that might be at a broader level, at a European level, might not be some of the roles that our meteorological centers play for us. But it would be better if we looked at it at that particular low scale level. Regardless, to explore just more, the European Space Agency leads and enables European involvement in the space resource utilization, but also it ensures the social and economic benefits for Europe. And I am a little certain that we also have an African space agency, probably. But if we do not have an African space agency, then at our local level, we get information. But what I know is that we have the African Space Agency that was formulated in 2023. And instead of us focusing more on the role of the European Space Agency, I would like us to just look, I would just want to run through quickly some of the main goals of the African Space Agency, which unfortunately are not in these notes, but like I said earlier on, you should be able to note them as we proceed here. So the African Space Agency, the goal was that it is to make African space program competitive globally, and that it will develop a regulatory framework. So some of the roles of the African African Space Agency included to promote and coordinate, to address user needs, to support member states and regional economic communities, to enhance and facilitate access to space resources, to support critical infrastructure, to coordinate development of a critical mass of African capacities, to foster regional coordination and collaboration, to promote strategic partnership.
I think you are so faster because the thing is not there, and maybe people are trying to take some short note summary, but
I'm going to share with you where you can be able to get those notes. I'm going to share with you a link. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that's okay. Then we have to support critical infrastructure, to coordinate development, but also to raise awareness, engage member states, and operate on the basis of international corporations. So those are some of the roles of the African Space Agency. So for those who would want to read through this, you go to what we call the spacehubs.africa. Space Hubs, SPACEHUBS.Africa. Spacehubs.Africa, and there is a question that was posed there. Space Hubs, SPACE Hubs, HUBS.Africa. Space Hubs does not have space in between .Africa. You'll be able to go to your browser and get why does the African Space Agency exist, and you'll be able to answer or get some of the issues that I have been mentioning in here. So, like we had discussed earlier on, that let me just run through faster because our time is almost fast spent. But like we discussed earlier on in the initial stages of this module, we understand that urbanization takes place mainly because of the rapid population growth. And we just want to have statistics of how the world population growth is occurring. And globally, population is booming. And by last year, 2023, the world had reached 8 billion. And it is projected that it will hit 9.1 billion by the year 2050. So this rapid growth has just been occurring in the last 90 years. And less developed regions are the driving force for this growth. While the developed regions remain relatively stable, we realize that the developing countries are having a population explosion, and that does not spare our developing countries in East Africa, but also South Sudan at large. And whereas there are issues regarding unrests and so forth in the African region, the African population is expected to double by 2050. So fertility rates are declining globally, but the population momentum will keep numbers rising past 2050, because mainly our African population and fertility rates remain very high. The last time, I'm not very aware of the one for South Sudan, but for Sudan, the population currently is at 48 million people, and the highest African country with the highest population is Nigeria with 228 million people. So you realize that the African population is growing extremely high, and when we're talking about the population doubling by 2050, it means for now we approximate that the total population of Africa in 2023 was 1.4 billion, and that means that by 2050 this population will double, and if it is to double, we would have about 2.8 billion people in Africa. And therefore, with that rising number, we expect that Africa will be urbanizing at a very high rate in that. So we have some of the key trends, and one is that there's a dramatic increase that has occurred in the recent decades with major implications for the future, but also we have falling fertility rates alongside rising life expectancy and the rapid urbanization with more people living in cities than in rural areas. So your task here is to go and look at, in the recent decades, what is the population growth for South Sudan, for the particular country, but also what are the falling fertility rates. For example, if you went to the UNHCR portal or the WHO portal, you will be able to find some of the statistics regarding South Sudan, and you will be able to know what particularly their total fertility rate is. And then it is part of the assignment that you should, or part of the trigger, not necessarily an assignment that you're going to present here, but you should be able to look at what does the recent increase in the population growth rate have for you, but also what does the falling fertility rate have as an effect or as an impact, one on housing, but also on reproductive health as a whole. Then we should be able to look at how the rapid urbanization trends are in the country. How many slums have come up, have continued to rise up in the city as a result of the urban movement, but also is the rural population dropping? So you need to look at the relationship between urbanization and mortality levels in the rural areas vis-a-vis mortality levels in the urban areas, but also you need to look at the morbidity trends, how disease spread is occurring in the urban areas, in the rural areas, but you should also look at the population growth itself. Because of the urban-rural movement or the rapid urbanization as well, do you have more populations in the rural areas, or the urban areas are occupying higher populations? Then you should be able to differentiate the fertility rate within the urban areas vis-a-vis the fertility rate in the rural areas. So some of the challenges are that meeting the needs of a growing population in terms of jobs, income, and reducing poverty, healthcare, education, housing, and basic necessities, but also sustainable resource management. All these are quite hard issues regarding a growing population. You realize that the employment levels are reducing, the income levels, household income levels are lower, but also poverty is increasing. Seeking healthcare, we start to have deteriorating healthcare services. We start to have education becoming less quality. You might have more pupils than the expected ratio for students. Housing becomes depleted. You have more slums rising up, but also basic needs become very hard to afford. So those are the challenges that we would want to look at. And so, because of the time constraint we have, I would wish to end there for today, so that tomorrow we can be able to just run through the factors that are affecting population distribution. And I think by tomorrow we can be able to finish the remaining slides that we have, so that we can be able to introduce the aspect of migration. So I would like to end there because